I began doing movie reviews way back in 2009, and contrary to popular belief, it was not because of the nostalgia critic, aka Doug Walker. It was actually the cinema snob who was the first one that I saw and the one who inspired me to start my own movie reviewing series, though I would later become a fan of Doug's work as well. He's reviewed a lot of films that I like, and most of the time I can see his point and laugh at the movie's expense. I love The Lost World, Drop Dead Fred, I have a soft spot for Good Burger and Jingle All the Way, just to name a few. However, he often contradicts himself, ripping on certain films for one thing, like calling The Dark Knight Rises too long.
You might be a little bored by it at times because it is extremely long.
You like Lord of the Rings. They're not exactly known for being short. And you made a 3.5-hour mini-series based on your web show. He rips on Jingle All the Way for commercialism but likes A Christmas Story. He complains about The Shining mini-series being unable to wrap up a scene with a simple solution, despite the aforementioned Peter Jackson saga being guilty of that even more so. He also often misses vital plot points or just doesn't explain himself very well, like how Ben Affleck was actually bad in Daredevil. No reason, he just was. Because it's Ben Affleck. He just sucks. And he, as well as his brother, often tend to lean towards being so arrogant they refuse to acknowledge that maybe other people can like or dislike a movie. I mean, this is a guy who said,
there's no good movies or bad movies, there's just movies you like and don't like.
And then went on to say,
and most people I've seen who like the movie, it's very much in the, it was alright. Like, there were some problems, but it was alright.
The people that like
nobody
it,
loves it.
I haven't found anybody that said like, it's amazing, it's phenomenal, there's no problems. Everybody has an issue with it.
He said Happy Madison fans shouldn't live, people only like Hocus Pocus as a guilty pleasure and they all know it sucks, and it just comes across as uncomfortable to watch sometimes with someone forcing an opinion on you so much. Usually, however, I can ignore all of that and just enjoy the comedy for what it is. However, today I am looking at his review of Francis Ford Coppola's Jack. Jack is one of my favourite films, and a lot of Doug's points are the universal criticism, most of which I can counter, but I can also see some negativity behind it, and I'll admit to a lot of its flaws when the time comes. Let's just dive right in.
It doesn't even sound real. Francis Ford Coppola, the director of The Godfather, directed a movie where Robin Williams is a 10-year-old in a man's body.
And Doug Walker, director of great films like Suburban Nights and To Boldly Flee, directed Dragon Board, an unfunny and direct rip-off of Jungle to Jungle just 1 year after reviewing Jungle to Jungle and calling it unfunny and unoriginal. Irony.
So they try to figure out what made him come out so fast, and it turns out he has a hyper-rare condition most likely caused by bad screenwriting.
Actually, it's a real disease. It's called Werner syndrome. The movie may have, slightly exaggerated the aging process, but it's a real disease. Terrible writing!
Okay, now here's the major problem with the movie. Jack is not being played like a 10-year-old. He's being played like a kindergartner.
And that's the main issue the entire world has. And honestly, it's quite easily explained. I actually feel stupid that I have to explain it, especially to the likes of Doug Walker, who usually knows what he's talking about and is usually pretty good at analysing films. I mean, Jack may be 10 years old, but he's been coddled and protected by his parents for a decade. He's barely been outside, he's never been to school, he's been kept away from society, so therefore he obviously would be a lot less mature than the other kids. Also, how come no one bitches over the fact that Tom Hanks in Big acted like a 6-year-old and not the correct age?
No.
Yeah. Gross.
Oh no, that's different, right? Because it's not Jack. I mean, it's pretty obvious the whole movie shows that Jack is reclusive, that he's completely ignorant to everything around him. His parents are completely terrified of releasing him to the outside world, so they've pampered him like a child and just not allowed him to properly grow up. Now that one's out the way, let's continue.
How would you like to see your classroom? Yes? Yes. A little louder. A little louder, Jack.
Okay, maybe the kid with severe Tourette's syndrome would respond that way, but this is not the normal response for a 10-year-old.
Okay, you got a point there. That was kind of silly. But it was supposed to be? He has social anxiety, he's not used to interaction, which is exactly why he speaks quietly at first. The loud outburst was for comedic value, which I found funny, but your Harry Potter joke that follows was even funnier, so I'll let this one slide.
We see him break his desk, haha, bet you didn't see that one coming, huh?
Haha, it's only funny when Adam Sandler does it and Billy Madison, haha, didn't see that coming, haha.
As his mother looks over old pictures of him while blowing bubbles? Does she always do this when she's nostalgic, or is she just high as a kite?
Hey! Okay, I'll give you that one. That was kind of stupid. I'll get you next time, Critic.
Really hammering in the subtlety there with the violin, aren't you, Coppola? Let me guess, we're supposed to feel sad?
You'd say it was forced if they used a piano. What, would some heavy metal be more suitable for you?
Hey, how about a little help?
Rock on.
I'm not touching that thing. It's been contaminated now that he's touched it. Yeah, I ain't touching it. Ooh, 5 weeks. Goodies.
Cooties? Really? At age 10? You know, I think it's common knowledge that cooties are generally extracted after the age of 7. Everybody knows this.
Doug, were you ever picked on? I'm not necessarily condoning the use of cooties at 10 years old, but were you ever picked on? Because I was. And I can tell you firsthand that kids are nasty, kids are mean. I was picked on in my teen years for having bad dandruff. Kids find the most ridiculous things and use them to bully somebody for. It's just how kids work. It's not necessarily cooties, it's not like they're saying it to a random person. This is Jack, a grown man-child. They're just looking for excuses to bully him for, which is exactly what kids do, no matter the age.
As usual, Fran Drescher's voice sounds like a series of barn animals having asthma while smoking a box of menthols.
This coming from a guy who hired Bargo to talk like this.
A damn fool! You can't change your destiny! You can only choose to read it!
On purpose. Like, that's not his real voice, so you deliberately hired him to do that voice. Speaking of which, how the fuck can you make fun of Whitey's voice in 8 Crazy Nights?
Louis has dirty magazines under his bed. What are dirty magazines? I got to be...
Really? She's smiling at the fact that he wants dirty magazines?
Yeah, how dare she smile at the fact that her son is finally acting like a normal 10-year-old boy? Fucking bitch, you'd want him to remain a reclusive little hermit who's alien to everything around him. Whore.
Stuff knocked over. Ha ha ha!
Only funny in other slapsticks, only funny in other slapsticks, ha ha!
Check this out. Excuse me. Think our moms look like that?
I did not just hear that.
Hey, sometimes, alright, we just wonder what our mum looks like in the shower. Okay. Either admit this line is terrible, or defend it and say it's relatable. Okay, this line sucks.
Hey, Jack. You ever get a boner?
I did not just hear that! Okay, for Coppola, quick lesson on boys, seeing how you clearly never were one. Boys don't ask about this stuff, we just act like we know it and horribly make fun of the other dumb boys who actually ask about this stuff.
Dude, it's not like they're talking to an adult. Yeah, I agree that's how boys act, but it's not like they're talking to their father or something. This is a guy who's their age, but in an adult's body, so obviously they'd feel more comfortable and ask questions out of curiosity. I can see why that may sound like a shitty defense, but if you're 10 and you've got a friend who's also 10, but in an adult's body, he's the same age, you want to know about sex and hard-ons, why ask an adult and feel uncomfortable when you can just ask him? I don't think it's as bad as you're making out.
And of course, boys looking at naked women is totally cool, but then when actual girls come around, ew, gross, cuties, ew.
Because that's how boys are. You just explained to Coppola how boys act, but here you don't seem to understand boys yourself. Boys look at tits and feel hormonal at this age, but don't want to admit they like girls yet, so they make fun of them all the time to hide it. It's what boys do. Okay, so Doug Walker was never bullied, and Doug Walker was never a boy. Interesting.
He brings his homeschool teacher up to the treehouse because, yeah, wouldn't that make you the cool kid? Sweater vests and ties are totally in.
Yeah, that was dumb.
Did you eat this yet? Mm-hmm. Everybody has to.
Yep. It's good.
Oh, come on, he's had worse.
So did his victims. What?
Oh, guys.
So, that entire scene was pointless.
It was to show character development and him bonding with his friends to make events that take place later on that much more tragic. But nah, completely pointless.
Which leads to a nice bit of awkwardness when Jack asked Jennifer Lopez if he would go with him to the dance.
Wait, what?
If he would go with him to the dance.
If he will go with him.
As if he would go with him.
Jennifer Lopez is a man. Who knew? I'd still do him.
It's also a little confusing that in this world they throw a dance for kids when apparently at this age they're still tossing water balloons at girls.
My son is 6 and his school throw discos. For kids younger than him too.
We're gonna go back to the way things were before you started school.
No.
Hey, remember all the fun we had?
No. No! No!
Dude, you're being offered not to go to school. Take advantage of it.
Yeah, forget all those friends you made and bonded with in that pointless scene after being locked away for 10 years. Take advantage of none of that.
And I'm not gonna lie, the next 20 minutes has no purpose whatsoever. He accidentally gets in a fight with Willem Dafoe, gets sent to jail, Drescher bails him out, and he stays away from public school. The hell was the point of all that? Yeah, let's try this again. Let's try, I think you should stay away from public school, and now he stays away from public school. All the Bard, Drescher, Green Goblin, it's not needed.
Are you kidding me? Doug, you are a filmmaker, okay? You made, in my opinion, an incredibly well-written and creative movie to boldly flee. And you missed a huge fucking character transformation. Like, those 20 minutes were a vital part of the story, and you completely missed the point of them. You even fucking admit it and show the damn clips. Jack wants to go to school to see his friends, his mum refuses, he then runs out, goes to a bar, gets into a fist fight, and then becomes afraid and doesn't want to go to school to see his friends. Can you seriously not see that huge fucking character transformation? It's a vital part of the story. Can you seriously not see the 180 that Jack's character just made? The fact that he wanted to go to school, but then he went out to the real world, realised how dangerous and scary it is, so he doesn't want to go to school. The entire character changes, the entire story changes. Were you fucking drunk when you wrote this? I want to give you the benefit of the doubt and hope you were.
Don't you think you've had enough?
I'll tell you I've had enough.
Hey, Jack's mother! Jack's mother! Can Jack come out and play?
We really missed the way he called us names and threw water balloons at us. Can we have more of that?
That's what girls do! Dude, I grew up with a female best friend at school, and I can tell you firsthand, they're just as fucking nonsensical and bipolar as boys are. This is perfectly normal behavior from 10-year-old girls.
Is this really appropriate music to play? I mean, it's not like he's coming out or feeling better. He's still crying like mad in his room. This really doesn't seem to fit.
Okay, that's a good point. I mean, the happy music was to show that he made friends, you know, it really made a difference in their lives, and they were just happy to hang out with him, and he finally became one of them, you know, he finally overcame his issues, and he finally made a difference. But I suppose it's a good point.
So I may not know what I want to be when I grow up. And right now I really don't care. I want to be like the giant. My best friend. Jack.
You know, it's at cliched, horribly written scenes like this that, I'm sorry, I really cannot believe Francis Ford Coppola, the Francis Ford Coppola, directed this.
Why was it cliche and poorly written? I mean, I can kind of let the cliche thing slide because it was the mid-90s and everybody was doing that kind of thing.
But it's only bad when Jack does it.
But my problem is, you don't explain why it's poorly written. You just go off on your boner fest for, oh, Francis Ford Coppola, I love you so much. Oh, Francis Ford.
Oh, it's still not funny!
Only when other slapstick comedies do it.
Oh, for God's sake, how often are they gonna skip around gigantic periods of time that we'd actually be interested in seeing?
2.
For Coppola, okay, guy who transformed Brando into a frail old man, half a can of white spray paint doesn't equal frail old man! That's not a person who's had years and years thrown on his life. That's a bad Halloween costume of Mark Twain.
I'll agree with that point also. But, oh, Francis Ford Coppola, I love you so much.
One day you will be mine.
You know, I'm convinced if you just take all the big dramatic Robin Williams speeches from all his movies and just put them all together, they basically just say the same thing.
You mean not the nostalgia critics?
First, we take Molossia, and then the neighbors down the street. And then their neighbors, and then their neighbors, and then their neighbors. Until we build a military force so gigantic that nobody will be able to stop us. After all this is over, we will not only have a ton of money, but our names will also be placed in the book of destiny.
I'm no good at making speeches, and quite frankly, that's all I got.
So he rides off with his friends, and that's it. Yeah, we don't know what happens after that. We don't know if he goes on or dies, or if he makes anything of his life, or it just sort of stops.
Would you have preferred if it had 17 endings, like Return of the King?
I literally feel nothing coming out of this. If it focused on him getting older, or even dying, or...
What? It did! It did! There's a scene which you didn't even show where he says,
What do I want to be when I grow up? Alive.
We get the picture, George.
Completely missed that, didn't you? The whole message of his speech was about his impending doom, which is why the final scene in my mind is so heartbreaking. We know he hasn't got long left, we just don't need to see it.
For Coppola, shame on you!
Did he mention Francis Ford Coppola made this? This review just seems to constantly reiterate the director, which seemed to be your main issue, and although I can see people's problems with the comedy, I still love the film. It has its sweet moments, and your review just got a lot of details wrong. You got some good jokes in this review, and I'll continue to enjoy your content, just not a fan of this one. And that's it for this response. If you guys like this, hit like, share, subscribe, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, click one of the videos on the screen now, and I will see you next time.
You forgot to say a book. You always say a book. You forgot to say a book.
My book's down there.